Hello, Purple Lamb Fiber Arts subscribers. This is Donna Farrell with Fig Basket Crochet, and this is a tutorial I am making just for you for the Primrose Lace Summer Shawl that I use Carla's merino sparkly sock wool for. I just love this pattern. I love making it. I love her yarn. I love everything about it. The first thing you want to do is get 3 hanks of Carla's yarn in any colors that you choose. 2 of the hanks need to be the same color. The third one can be the same color or a different color for the border. And then you'll want to, of course, wind those hanks into a ball. All right, once you have wound the hank into the ball, you want to chain 97. Make sure you leave a nice long tail. It makes it easier for weaving the ends in. I use a J hook, a 6mm US size 10 or J hook because it leaves the open weave in this particular pattern, which is what you want. It is a summer shawl, but it does make the yarn tricky to handle at the beginning because there's just no form to it. And you may even see me struggle a little bit with that in this video. There's just no way around it, or no way to guarantee a very well-behaved yarn at the beginning of this. So you just have to keep track of where you are, know where your stitches are, and not be afraid to undo something or start over. What we're going to do is treble crochet into the 7th chain from the hook. 7, there's my 7th chain. All right, get everything reoriented. Treble crochet, treble crochet, treble crochet. All right, so I've got my starting chain and that first treble crochet. The next treble crochet is going to be crocheted behind this and backwards into the chain, the 3rd stitch back, but I'm first going to chain 2. Yarn over twice. 1, 2, 3 into the 3rd chain back. I'm going to go behind the treble crochet and then into the front of that chain. Rewind this and watch it over and over again if you need to. And I'm finishing the treble crochet stitch. And then here you've got something that's a bit of a mess. You need to reorient yourself. So find your 2 treble crochet stitches, let me get back in the frame here, and distinguish them from your first chain stitches, all right? So you see here I'm using my finger to do that. I've got this nice X here, and I'm separating it from the opening chain, all right? So I know what I'm doing. It's gonna be this X that you're gonna be making all the way down the line, okay? Now the X's in the foundation row are slightly different from the X's in the rest of the pattern. So you wanna be sure to pay attention once we get to that the next row. Now I'm gonna chain 1, and I'm going to skip 3 stitches and crochet, treble crochet into the 4th stitch. So yarn over twice, 1, 2, 3, 4th one. There we go. And I chain 2 after that initial treble crochet. Now I'm going to make the other half of the X. Treble crochet, I'm going to go behind, and I'm going to go into the 3rd crochet, a chain stitch back, and then enter that chain stitch from the front. And let's finish that treble crochet stitch and chain 1. All right. So for this foundation row, you're chaining 2, let me get back in the frame, sorry ladies, chaining 2 between the 2 parts of the X, and then chaining 1 after the X. That's for the foundation row, all right? Let's do the next X. I'm skipping 3, 1, 2, 3. I'm treble crocheting into the 4th one, and I'm going to chain 2, and then yarn over twice, go behind the first bar of that X, 3 stitches back, and treble crochet through the front of that chain stitch, and chain 1. Let's see, trouble staying in the frame. All right, we're going to do one more together, and then I will see you at the end of the row. All right, one more. Skip 3, go into the 4th, treble crochet, chain 2, yarn over twice, count backwards, and chain 1. Now we have, let me put this hook down. We've got 4 X's, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. You're going to proceed that way all the way to the end of the row. There are going to be 2 chain stitches left at the end of the row, which we will deal with when we get there, all right? So I'll see you ladies at the end of the row, and you can rewind this section over and over again if you need the additional guidance to get there. All right, we're back. I misspoke at the end of the last clip. You'll actually have 3 single crochets, chain stitches left at the end of your row, and that is just fine. And so you should have a series of X's here. That's your first row. And if you made it through this row, congratulations. It can be a little frustrating managing the yarn, doing the counting backwards, etc., etc. So, but you're about to hit an easier path. So here we go. All right, so what we want to do is 1 treble crochet in the final chain. All right? There we go. Now we're going to chain 4. We're going to chain 4 at the end of every row of the pattern, all right? 1, 2, 3, 4, and then turn. Some people are in the turn and then chain camp. I'm in the chain and then turn camp in the crochet world. All right, and so identify that first X, all right? Now the way that we do the treble crochet crisscrosses from here on to the end of the shawl is going to be the same. It's slightly different from the first row, but the second and subsequent rows are going to be all the same. So you're going to identify the second arm of the X, and you will treble crochet into that arm. And then chain 1. Down below you change 2, but now you're just chaining 1. And then you're going to treble crochet behind that, and then into the top of the first arm of that X, okay? And then you do not make a chain at the end of this X. Now you see you've got 1 X on top of the other. And then identify your next X, treble crochet into the top of the second arm, chain 1, and then treble crochet back behind, and then go in through the front of the top of that first arm. Now we've got 2 X's on top of each other. Let's do one more together, and then I will see you at the end of this row. All right, 3 X's on top of each other, and I'll see you in a minute. All right, we're back, and I'm going to do the last X of the row with you, and then we'll finish this row. Now to end the row, we're going to do one treble crochet into the chain that's at the end of the row here. You'll see here I've got my last treble in that stitch, and then I've got a chain stitch here. I'm going to skip that chain and treble crochet into the second unused chain. Okay, and I have ended the row there. And then remember, like I said earlier, what we'll want to do next is chain 4 at the end of every row. And then we'll turn our work. And then you're going to proceed just like this second row through the rest of the pattern. I'll do the first X to start us off and then have a couple of observations about the rest of this. Hold on. Okay, there we go. We've got our third row here. Let's see if we can straighten that out a little bit. You've got that. That's shaping up very nicely. All right. 3 X's on top of each other. So I usually get somewhere upwards of 60 rows of X's with 2 hanks of the Purple Lamb Fiber Arts yarn. The chain 97 gets you the width of this, or the length of the scarf. Well, let's say the width of the scarf from about your shoulders to your hips. All right. And then it is up to you how long you want the scarf to be. I usually just like to go ahead and finish up 2 hanks and get just over 60 rows or however long that takes me. And then I'll do a border either in another hank of the same color yarn or choose a separate color to give it a little bit of an accent. So it's really up to you how long you go, but I like to just be neat and tidy and use up 2 hanks of yarn to finish this. So you keep going, rewind this if you need to take a look at the stitch again, and I am going to see you at the end of your last row of X's, and we'll work on the Picot border, which is quite lovely. Welcome back. I'm back having finished the main body of the scarf. Using 2 hanks of Purple Lamb Fiber Arts Smitten yarn in sparkly merino sock, I got 70 rows, which is a very generous drape of a shawl. And I have this much of the hank left, of the second hank, so goodbye. And I'm joining a new color for the border. This is a little black dress in sparkly merino sock. If you would like to do your border in the same color, you'll either need to reduce the number of rows to stay with 2 hanks, or you'll need to get a 3rd hank of the yarn. I have already joined the new color. I won't get into the details of joining that. If you're an experienced crocheter, you likely have your favorite way of joining yarn. So I have already joined the little black dress yarn to the end here. And let's see what I'm going to do, pardon me while I deal with the yarn, is I am going to get the yarn ends out of my way, and I'm going to do a basic single crochet all around the border here. That's going to be the foundation row of my border. You see, sometimes this yarn does not like to behave like any yarn. All right, so identify the first sort of group of stitches here. I'm going to put 4 single crochets into this. You may want to chain 1 first. The way I joined included a chain 1. In any case, I'm going to do 4 single crochets in this gap. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. And then I've got the next gap here, and guess what? I'm going to do 4 single crochets here. 1, see, 2, 3, 4. And then the next gap, and so on and so forth, all the way to the end of the row. So why don't you continue doing the single crochets into the gaps all the way to the end of this edge, and then I will meet you at the end of the edge and we will discuss the corner. All right, here I am at the end of the row. I should mention that this first row should be the long one. You're not going to turn and go back over the top of the short side that you just finished with the first color of the main body. You'll go back with the new color and the first row of the border over the long edge. And I have just finished the long edge, and it's pretty simple. What I'm going to do now here, that I'm at the end, is drop my hook. There we go. Let's get resituated. And you see that the X is there. Did the last 4, and I'm going to chain 2. And then I'm going to identify the space in the middle of the X on this short row. This would be the bottom of your work here. And I'm going to do 4 single crochets into the space of the X. 2, 3, 4, and then I'm going to skip this, and I'm going to do 4 single crochets into the space of the next X. Let's see, 4. Okay, you can hear my dog in the background, one of my 2 dogs. All right, I'm going to continue like this around the short edge. This was the bottom of your work, doing 4 single crochets into the spaces of the X's, and then I will see you at the end of this edge. All right, I've just completed the row of single crochet, that's the foundation row of the border of the bottom short edge, and now we're ready to turn to the next long side, and it's so simple. Again, we're going to chain 2, and then just like the other long side, we've got these long gaps here. We're going to single crochet 4 into each of those long gaps. Here I have my starting tail. What I'm going to do is crochet over part of that tail, just so there's less to weave in when I'm done with the project. 3, 4. Let me go to get that tail out of the way now, because I'm going to want to weave it back in. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. And you see the next gap, and so on, just like the other long side, 4 single crochets into each of these gaps, and I will see you back at the end of this side. All right, here we are at the end of that second long edge, about to finish the first row of the final edge of the work. I've come here to the last space. I've got this last row here. I thought I'd wait to do on camera the last 4 stitches. You're going to see this last row is a gap that's got this chain here. So into the chain space, you want to do 4 single crochets, and these are the last 4 single crochets of the long edge. And then I'm going to chain 2. Now this last edge is a little trickier than the other edges in order to maintain the evenness of the stitches. You're going to want to do a single crochet into the first arm of the X. All right, into the top of that arm. Then in the space of the X, first of all, I want to point out this stitch here. Hang on to that stitch in your mind. It's the top of the second arm of the X, okay? So just put a pin in that for a second. We're going to do 2 single crochets into the gap of the top of the X, and then 1 single crochet into the top of the second arm of the X. And so that way that X has 4 single crochets. The first one here, 2, 3, 4. You'll notice that the very next stitch is the top of the first arm of the second X. So we want to single crochet into that. And we're going to identify, just to keep track of where we are, the top of that second arm. Hold on to that. Let's do 2 single crochets into the space, and then a single crochet into the top of that second arm. Let me do one more with you. The very next stitch is the top of the first arm of the next X. Do a single crochet. You can hear my other dog walking around here. 2 single crochets, and then a single crochet into the top of the second arm of the X. Whoopsie. All right, there we go. Okay, so you see that you're going to continue that way all the way down, and then we will have completed the first row of the border. So I will meet you at the end of this row. We'll talk about connecting the edges of the row and then moving up to the second row of the border. All right, we're back. We're at the end of the last side of the first row of our border, and I'm going to do the last little bit here, which is what I've been telling you. I'm going to, let me get rid of those straight ends there. I've already done a single crochet into the top of the first X, 2 single crochets into the space, 1 single crochet into the second arm of that X. Then I'm going to chain 2. I tend to get away from the center of the frame here, my apologies. And then I'm going to join with a slip stitch. All right, now the second row of the border is a double crochet V-stitch. So I'm going to start that off at the corner here by chaining 3. Then I'm going to double crochet back into this space. Watch carefully. Into that chain 2 space. So this chain 3 really serves as the first double crochet. So you'll see that the first double crochet V-stitch is in the corner space. So when we come back around, you'll see that we're going to make another V-stitch and join them, but we'll get to that later. Then what you want to do is skip 2 and work a V-stitch into the third stitch. All right, so I'm skipping this one and this one, and I'm going to work a V-stitch here. So the V-stitch is a double crochet, a chain 1, and another double crochet. There you go. Then we're going to skip these 2 and do a V-stitch into this third one here, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet. Let's do one more together for good measure. I'll skip this one and do double crochet, chain 1, double crochet. Continue like that all the way across this edge, and we will meet again at the corner. All right, here we are at the end of the first edge of V-stitches. So we're now getting ready to do our corner V-stitch. Identify the chain 2 space from the previous row, and you're going to do a V-stitch into that chain 2 space. Here we go, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet. Then you'll chain 2, and then you'll do another V-stitch right into that same chain 2 space. Double crochet, chain 1, double crochet. So now we have our corner V-stitch, which is 2 V-stitches separated by a chain 2 space into the chain 2 space of the previous row. And you'll continue like this. You will skip this one, and do another V-stitch here. And so on and so forth. And every time you get to a corner, you'll find that chain 2 space from the previous row, and you'll do a V-stitch, chain 2, V-stitch into that corner space. So finish going all the way around the shawl, and I will meet you back at the end when we have done V-stitches all the way around the shawl. All right, we're back, and I've made a V-stitch row around the entire shawl. And we're going to finish off this row and talk about what comes next. Let's make the last V-stitch into the corner. So you'll recognize the first V-stitch that you made, which was a chain 3 and a double crochet. So what you want to do is make a V-stitch into this same chain 2 space. And then chain 2. And then you want to find the second chain of that first chain 3 space, and you'll want to slip stitch into that. There you go. Now, if you just want one row of your border, then you can, we'll be ready to go to the picot round. I am going to keep going with another V-stitch row or 2. I haven't decided yet. When I make a shawl where the border is the same color as the body, I like to just do one row of the V-stitch before I go to the next round where we make the picots. But when I do a separate color, I like the border to be a little bit thicker to give that new color a little more definition. So since I'm doing a second color here, I'm going to do another 1 or 2 rows of V-stitches. To make another row of the V-stitch, we'll chain 3 and then do a double crochet right there into that same chain 2 space. You might be able to hear my dog chewing on his bone in the background there. All right, then identify the next 2 V-stitches. You'll want to make your first V-stitch of the next row in the space between the next 2 V-stitches. Oh, he's really going to town on that dog bone. All right, and then the next V-stitch between the next 2 V-stitches. All right, and you go like that all the way around, and you make your corner V-stitches the same, where you make a V-stitch into the chain 2 space, chain 2, a second V-stitch into that same chain stitch, and then go around and you're going to put your remaining V-stitches in between the V-stitches of the previous row. All right, so I will see you when I'm done. All right, we're back. I decided to do 3 rows of V-stitches on my border. And now we're ready for the picot round, which is such a lovely, delicate way to edge a border. The first thing you're going to do after you connect with a slip stitch, your last V-stitch to the first V-stitch here. Now we're going to let me define the corner here for you. All right, so we see the corner. This is the last V-stitch I made, and this is the first V-stitch of that row of the border. It's into this space that I'm working. I'm working into the space of the first V-stitch of the row I just finished, okay? We're just gonna make a single crochet right now into the space of the V-stitch. Then we're going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and then identify the first chain of that chain 3, and we're going to slip stitch into that chain. All right, you see I've got my hook in there, and I'm pulling that yarn through, and you see what I've made is like a little tangle right there. That's the picot right there. We're going to make that all the way around, and then into the same space of that same V-stitch, I'm making another single crochet, and that closes the picot. Okay, so I've made a picot there. Then into the space between this V-stitch and the next V-stitch, I'm going to do a slip stitch. And then into the space of the next V-stitch, I'm repeating the picot, which is single crochet 1, chain 1, 2, 3, slip stitch into the first chain, and then single crochet again, and then we're going to slip stitch into the space before the next V-stitch. And you see I've got 2 picots here. If you see the yarn kind of come up, you can tuck it back in there, but it won't matter, it'll all work out. Let's do one more picot into the space of the next V-stitch, single crochet, chain 1, 2, 3, slip stitch into that first chain. Oh, hang on, I think I caught a little bit of yarn I didn't mean to. There we go. And single crochet again to close the picot, and then slip stitch into the space before the next V-stitch. All right, so I've made 3 picots there. Go all the way to the end of this side, and then we'll address the corner picot, which is just a little bit different. So there's my dog, and I guess that's time for me to stop this section, and I'll meet you at the end of the edge. All right, I'm back at the end of the first edge of the picot round, and I'm at the corner. And you can see I'm at the corner. You can see the V-stitch at the end of this first edge, and the chain 2 and the other V-stitch that make this corner. I have just finished a picot. I have not done, well, let me just leave it at that. I've just finished a picot. Now I'm going to go into that chain 2 space. I will do a slip stitch, then chain 1, single crochet, chain 3, slip stitch into the first chain of the chain 3, single crochet, and then slip stitch into the same corner space. So you see the picot in the corners is kind of edged by slip stitches to begin, instead of going straight to the single crochet. So you will end the edge by the picot, slip stitch, chain 1, single crochet, chain 3, slip stitch into the first chain of the chain 3, single crochet, slip stitch. That is your corner picot. And then I'm going straight to the picot for the next V-stitch. Single crochet, chain 3, slip stitch into the first chain of the chain 3, single crochet, back into that same V-stitch, And then I'm doing the slip stitch into the space between that V-stitch and the next V-stitch. And I am into the second edge. You're going to do this all the way around. So if you need to rewind when you get to your next corner, do that same corner picot. Do this all the way around, pardon me, around the edge, and I will meet you back when we're done with our picot round of the border. And we're back. I'm back all the way around, and we're going to make the last corner picot together and finish off our work. See right here, I've got that chain 2 space in the previous row. And as before, I'm going to do a slip stitch into the space, chain 1, single crochet, chain 3, slip stitch into the first chain of the chain 3, single crochet, slip stitch. There we go. Now I have finished basically, so let me cut my end. I am going to leave several inches so that weaving in the ends is comfortable. I am going to go into the single crochet of the next picot, and I'm just going to do a slip stitch right there. But I'm not going to pull it all the way. I'm going to loosen it, and then I'm going to pull that yarn through again and tighten it so that I've got a knot here. And I am done. So now what you want to do is weave in all of your ends. I prefer to do it with a tapestry needle, but you can do it with a smaller crochet hook if you like. I like to weave in back and forth and through stitches so that the ends will never ever go anywhere. And what I like about this is, especially with me deciding to do the 3 rows of the V stitches, is that I only have this much yarn left of the hank that I used for the border. So this was a pretty efficient pattern for me with the number of rows that I decided to go with. It was 2 hanks of the body, 1 hank for the border. I've used pretty much all the yarn and I'm ready to go. So I hope you have enjoyed this tutorial. Again, this is exclusively for subscribers to Purple Lamb Fiber Arts email list. I hope that you visit Carla's online store, get your hanks of yarn and get your hook and get ready to go. Have a great day. Bye-bye.